For this lesson, we're going to be talking about cables. First, we're going to start with unbalanced audio cables. And in an unbalanced cable, there's a core, which is just a bunch of small wires that have been twisted together. And the core is insulated by plastic or some other type material. Around that, there's a shield that's a wire mesh, usually. And then there's a rubber or plastic outer insulation. And the hot line is the core of the wire, and that's what carries the signal. And then there's also an earth or ground line, which is the shield that you see wrapped around there. Common types of cables that are unbalanced are quarter-inch phono plugs, which you might find if you have an electric guitar, RCA plugs that you might find if you have a home stereo system. For instance, if you have a audiovisual setup that's together, red for the RCA cables usually represents right, the white represents the left channel of audio, and then the yellow normally represents the video. In a balanced cable, however, there's a difference. In addition to just the hot core, there's also a cold core, which carries the same signal as the hot, but inverted or flipped 180 degrees out of phase. The shield remains the same. The earth or ground is the shield. So what happens in balanced audio is that any interference that comes into the wire, because the wire ends up, the cable ends up acting like a big antenna that picks up radio frequencies and other electrical interference. And if there's some interference that's introduced, it gets introduced to both of these waves, both the hot and the cold. And on the input stage, when the signal arrives at the destination, at whether that's the mixer or whatever input device you're using, these two signals are flipped. Actually, one of the cold is flipped back in phase with the hot, and the two signals are summed together to create a stronger signal. Let's look at an example of what that would sound like. I'm going to record myself. I'm going to make up some text just so we have something to work with. This is the text that we're going to use to demonstrate balanced audio. This is the text that we're going to use to demonstrate balanced audio. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sound file that we have, and I'm going to invert the phase, which makes it 180 degrees out of phase. So every time that it was going positive, it's going to go negative, and vice versa. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to make a new file with that. So I'm going to take my copy of the file that I just made and flip it 180 degrees out of phase. Now I'm going to also pretend that I'm creating some interference, and so I'll just talk into the mic and create my own interference. This is my interference channel. I'm just going to blah, 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 and create some junk that I want to get rid of. This is my interference channel. So now I'm going to paste this interference on top of both of my channels of audio that I have. So now, listen to my original. This is my interference channel. This is the text that we're going to use to demonstrate balanced audio that I want to get rid of. So I'm going to try and get rid of that junk now. I'm going to take my hot sound file and my cold sound file. Remember, I'm going to invert the cold 180 degrees out of phase. And when I paste that onto my hot file, the unwanted signal goes away, and the original signal gets summed and increased in amplitude with constructive interference. This is the text that we're going to use to demonstrate balanced audio.